Hey there guys, welcome back to another UVI Falcon tutorial. Today we are going to make a classic Reese bass. Now this video is going to be a little bit on the longer side because this is the first actual sound design video in the UVI Falcon series that I'm doing. So that means I'm going to have to explain a little bit more than I'm going to have to do in the upcoming videos. I'll have to explain a little bit first about how to map your stuff within this plugin because it works a little bit different than normal. So that's what we're gonna do first. Now, before we're gonna get into that, if you want to get one of these t-shirts, I'm wearing one right now, Basic Waves. Look at the website, basicwaves.com, the link is in the description, and if you use the code ARTFX10, you get a 10% discount, and with that, you will also help support this channel. So without further ado, let's get into it. The sound we're gonna be making today sounds like this. So, here we are with UVI Falcon and we're going to start making a Reese bass. Now, this is the first sound design video in a series of sound design videos, so I kind of want to talk a little bit about how to start building a patch with UVI Falcon, because it's a little bit different than some synthesizers out there. By default, it does not make any sound, so if I press a key right now, you can see inside Falcon that it's actually triggering the MIDI, but we don't hear anything, and that is because we don't have anything set up. So that is the thing with Falcon. When you start building a patch, you pretty much have to set everything up yourself, as opposed to some other synths like Serum and, well, pretty much most of the other synths. They will already have a lot of stuff pre-set up, so that when you load up the synthesizer, it's already playing a default patch, and from there you can just start building the patch straight away. In Falcon it's slightly different. So, if you want to start making a patch, the first thing I would always do is open up the mapping editor. Now the mapping editor is where you will basically drag in your oscillators or your samples, and that is where you will specify what the key range and the velocity range of that particular oscillator or sampler or whatever sound generator you use. It's going to specify the velocity range and the frequency range within the mapping editor. So that's where you can set those things. Let's get started. I'm first going to go here to the browser. Now this is the Oscillator browser, and I'm going to go into the synthesis category, and I'm just going to start off with an analog oscillator. Now you can open it up and you can see it has a bunch of options. I'm just going to take the default analog oscillator. I'm going to drag it right here into the mapping editor. Now you can see if I drag it in here, we get a specific frequency range, and we can set it to a particular root note by doing this. And if I drag up, we can see that the range widens. And if I go up all the way, we can see it suddenly jumps to the full frequency range. And that is kind of like what I want for this particular patch. So if we do this, we're dragging it on here, it creates a key group. And that key group is called key group 1. Now key group 1 is now the key group where that oscillator, that analog oscillator, will be sitting within. And it covers the entire frequency range because that's how we dragged it in. So now if I play, you will hear we get a sine wave. So that is our analog oscillator, and it's now actually mapped to the keyboard, and we can play whatever key we want and it will match the actual pitch that we hear. So now we can close down the mapping editor, so we can just close that down, and now we have our oscillators. Now we can get started making a patch. Right here you've got your analog oscillator, and it's within key group number 1 here. So if I go to the tree view, we can now have a look at that, and I can see here, for instance, that we've got layer 1, and inside layer 1 we have a key group. If I open that up, I can see we have an analog oscillator. So if I want, I can give the key group a name. So if I click on the key group here, I can go in here and double click, and I can, for instance, say Sol Reese. And now that key group will have the name right here, and we can also see that right here. So that's really easy, makes it very easy to find things back. Now, we could also do the same thing for the layer. Let's say I want to have a separate sub underneath this at some point, and I want to have this layer be the mid-range. I could call this one mid. So let me double click on here, mid, and I'll do that. And now that will be called mid. Same goes for the program. Let's call the program classic Reese, because we're going to start off with making a classic Reese bass. So now you can see we have a pretty well organized patch already. We can easily see what everything is, and yeah, that just makes things easier. I really like that feature that you can just rename stuff and just make everything easy to find back. So now on the oscillator, let's start making a Reese. I'm first going to start here and click on the sine wave oscillator, and that'll bring up a little menu. Now we're in the analog oscillator, so we only have a few options here, just pretty much your basic waveforms. We're going to start with the saw wave. So let's click on the saw wave, and we can see that the start phase is set to 0. I'm going to leave it at that actually. I'm just going to keep it at that. The only thing I'm going to do though is I'm going to increase the amount of voices to 2. So now that's what we get. So let's create a little MIDI clip here. I'll just create a MIDI clip right here and get started like that. So that's pretty high up. Let's bring that down. So that would be like a Reese, right? Or at least the starting point of a Reese. So by default, it already adds a little bit of detuning. So that's pretty cool. I want some more detuning, so let's see what this sounds like. So you can see the movement is starting to speed up. And that's kind of like what I want. You want to have that movement. And I want to keep this mono, because as soon as I turn this to stereo, like this, it's not that bad. But if we bring it all the way up, see, so now it's fully stereo, but we lose that oscillation. So that is kind of like what you want to be aware of. If you want to make a Reese, always try and keep things relatively mono, if you want to get that classic Reese bass modulation. So the thing with this is I can demonstrate if I turn the stereo off, and right here it says play mode polyphonic. I'm going to change that to play mode mono portamento, and I'm going to bring the glide time up to about, yeah, a little above 100 milliseconds. And let's create a different version of our MIDI clip now. So I'm going to do... I'm going to do this, and then let's do this. Let's see what this sounds like. Okay, so I also want to add some pitch bends, so that's what we're going to do now. Let's add some pitch bends like this. Let's see what that sounds like. So now we also have to set the pitch bend range, because otherwise it's going to pitch bend with only 2 semitones. So I need to go back into Falcon, and the way you do it, the way you do this is you have to be in the tree view right here. So make sure that you are in the tree view, and then you have to click on this one right here, which is show modulation notes. And if you do that, it'll, under the program, so that's the one right here, it'll show up pitch bend. And if you click that, it'll open it up right here in the modulation. So there you have your pitch bend range. It's 2 semitones, and we can drag that up all the way to 48. So I'm going to click that, and I'm going to enter 12. So now we have a range of 12 semitones. So let's do this. Let's do one on the end right here as well. Now, to make sure that we don't get any pitch bend bugs, I'm going to create a very short pitch automation at the start right here, because Ableton still has that weird pitch bend bug every now and then, and this way you simply don't get it. Now we can really play with that detune amount and see what speed we actually want on this particular Reese. And you can hear when we go up to a higher pitch, it now also speeds up that movement, and that is what you want. Now I can increase the stereo and just add a little bit of it. And that really makes the Reese wider, but it still sounds absolutely great with that modulation. Now I also want to bring down the release a little bit, because I think the release is a little long. And I usually don't use the dynamic here on the Reese basses, because I don't really need it. I want every note to be the same volume. So I'm just going to bring that down to 0 dB. So now we have a basic Reese, and from here it's just a matter of playing with filters and playing with effects to kind of make it sound a little bit more interesting. So your effects are going to be right here. That's your effects browser. And the first thing we could do, for instance, is we could try one of these distortion modules and just try and use that to shape the sound of the Reese a little bit before it goes into any other stuff like filters. So for instance, I can use the drive, and I can put that on the key group, and I can increase the drive here. That sounds quite interesting. Now I can also play around with these. So you can hear how you can really easily make a very nice and heavy Reese just by using a simple drive. Now let's add a filter. So I'm gonna add one of these filters. Now, you've got a lot to choose from actually. Let's try the expander filter. I'm a big fan of this one. And let's go maybe for some notches. Now that notch is a little bit heavy. I'm going to... Let's see, what else do we have? That's... Yeah, that's one that sounds nice. So increase the resonance a bit. And I want to modulate this one. So I can right click, add modulation, and I can add a modulation source here. So let's just do an LFO. Just to keep it easy. So our LFO now opens up right here at the bottom. That is where all your modulations will be. Or if you go right here, you can see all the modulations here as well. If we go to the mid layer, there's our LFO. But I want to do it right here in the edit tab. That's a little bit more convenient for me. So I want to sync this to the BPM. I can do that by clicking this little icon right here. That is basically a metronome, and that syncs it to the BPM of your host. So in my case, Ableton Live, and my BPM is set to 172 beats per minute. So now it will basically, yeah, just map to that. And the range is still very large. So if I bring this range down, you can already see what's going on here. Now, it's still a little bit much, so let me bring the depth down here. And I'm also going to slow this down. So let's... Yeah, I like that. That sounds really cool. We can add some modulation, for instance. So let's maybe let's add a chorus. Chorus is like a chorus effect. So I'm gonna add that on the mid layer here, and let's see what that sounds like. So that really gives us that wide sound, and I'm gonna just mix that in slightly. And it's still a little bit much, so I'm going to see if we can shape this a bit more. Can we sync this one to the BPM? That would be cool. I don't think we can. I don't see an icon here for syncing to the BPM. So I don't think we can do that, but that would be very cool if it can actually sync to the beat, but I don't think it can. So this is really cool. You can see that you can actually high pass the chorus effect, which is really helpful because that's especially helpful when you're making Reese basses. So now I can just do just on the high frequencies. Just add a bit of that widening on the high frequencies and then bring the mix down. Maybe bring this down a bit. It does add a little bit more to it. It's kind of nice. Yeah, so let's add a filter, a final filter here. So I'm gonna add this on the mid-range layer, and I'm gonna bring this down a bit. You can really hear that we get that deep sound now. Okay, so I like that. Let's add a modulator here, and let's do the modulation wheel. And now I can use the modulation wheel to create movement. So I can go into the MIDI clip now and select the modulation. And now I can start, for instance, adding some movement here. See, so now you can create movement like that. And just copy that over. So let's say I want to add a compressor to this just to kind of glue it all together. We have a compressor right here. So let's add that like that. I'm gonna bring that attack all the way down. I'm gonna bring the release up quite a bit. Now it's really squashing it together, and that helps if you're doing like filtering. It'll give you a lot of different volume fluctuations, and if you want to control that, you basically just do it by just putting a compressor on there with a really quick attack time too, so that it really responds very quickly to the incoming signal. And then after you've done that, you can basically just set the threshold to get these, well, to squash it how much you want. And after that, you just use the makeup gain to bring the level back up. So there's some stuff going on in the high frequencies I'm not a big fan of. So the final thing we could do is put an EQ here. Now you can see we actually have a full-on functioning EQ, a paramedic EQ here. So that's really great. And I think I want to make a cut somewhere around here. So if you right click on one of these dots, it'll turn them on. Or you just click here. Okay, I'm gonna add one final distortion here, see if that does anything good. Let's try the analog crunch. Interesting. We could also try the wave shaper after that, maybe. Could do something interesting. Now we're getting more into the heavier Reese territory, but this is pretty cool though. You can make some really cool stuff like this. That's a little bit heavy, but if we put this somewhere earlier in this chain, let's say maybe put it even before the filter, maybe. Or after it. If we put it after the filter, we're gonna get more of a heavier sound. Might be a little bit too much, so if I turn this back off, yeah, that's better. So that's kind of like how you would make a very simple Reese. I hope you liked it. And if you like this video, then please leave a comment below and let me know what you would like to see me make next in UVI Falcon. I'm actually planning to do a whole series about particular kind of sounds in UVI Falcon. So now a lot of people would always request like a sound of a particular artist. While that is pretty okay, you know, I could try that out, but it's always pretty difficult to nail a sound perfectly, just like how a different artist makes them, because everybody who makes music has its own way of doing things, so getting the exact same result is most of the time very difficult, unless it's like a really basic sound. So what I would like for the upcoming video, I think it would be great if you guys, instead of naming like a particular artist, just name me like a particular sound that you would like to hear. So not like a specific artist, but just keep it a little bit broader. Like say like I want to know more about making Reese basses, and say like I want to know more about Reese basses and then like the heavier ones, or I want to know more about those really heavy plucky lead sounds that you could also use as a bass, or you know, just describe it like that. And then I'm going to show you how to make those particular kinds of sounds, because I think if you know how to make the kind of sound, then you can apply that and create a whole variety of sounds that are within the same ballpark, but are not specific to a particular artist. And I think that way it will help you a lot more to develop your own sound. So let's do that in the upcoming UVI Falcon tutorial. I'll have a look at the comments in the upcoming week and see what comes in, and I would like to see what you guys want to see me do next. So, that's it for this one. I hope you liked this video, and I'll see you back soon. Peace!